One of the big topics amongst cricket fans at the moment is the cost of actually going to cricket. So all winter we've been encouraging everyone to support their counties, get along and keep cricket alive. But as the season has started, we are faced obviously with the wider picture of the cost of living crisis, but also the actual cost of going to cricket. And the big headline this week is the ticket prices for the Lord's Test match, which has got underway today. You can pay anything up to £160 to sit there and watch a very average England team take on the world champions. And if you're taking kids, families, or if you're going for a few days, I don't need to tell you what the maths are going to work out. So to discuss this, we're joined by Richard Clarke, the Grumbler, and Debbie Knight from 365 Sporting Days, both good friends of the show. Welcome, Debbie and Rich.
Morning.
I'll start off with you, Debbie. You go every day. Anyone that follows your social media will see that you're very active, not only with cricket, but rugby, theatre, cinema, etc. What do you think about the pricing currently of going to cricket matches?
Now, if I would never miss the first day at Lord's. But my current feeling is that I don't think I'll ever watch England again at Lord's. The price, difficult to say, because I've paid a lot of money to watch a rugby final, for example. Because I do a lot, I tend to, I don't pay loads of money to go to the theatre, for example. There's always an option for me to have a reasonably priced ticket. So I can't afford to pay £100 a pop to go to a cricket match. If we go to county cricket, we had a Sunday a few weeks ago. It was a gloriously sunny Sunday, which is hard to imagine at the moment. And Alistair Cook was in the team, and Harry Brook and Dawid Malan were starting the batting on the Sunday morning. And the ground was virtually empty. Now, why not advertise that, sing that from the rooftops? You were coming and watching the informed batsman in this country. Not that England seem to think that. Advertise it for £5. Just get people in the door and get them to have the habit. I first watched county cricket on a free ticket, and I actually watched Adam Wheater score 174, and I've been a member of Essex ever since. So I got hooked by that free ticket.
It's a good point about the marketing. Rich, you're an expert in this field. Now, if you get a tube train through London, and if you've caught a tube train over the last few months, you can go, for example, I noticed when I was sat on a tube that was waiting in King's Cross station, lots of pictures and advertising posters up there for Surrey and the T20. And then we see on the television, there are plenty of adverts for the 100, but no mention anywhere of red ball cricket. Is that a factor?
Yeah, it is. The marketing's always a factor these days, and certainly when I was getting into cricket in my youth, in the halcyon days of the Gooch and Fletcher side, there were many fewer options. Much fewer options. I'm getting my English incorrect there, but you know what I mean. There weren't as many options as there are now in terms of entertainment. A whole genre like gaming, which is bigger than the music and the film industry combined, that didn't exist. The gaming industry and the esports industry did not exist. So there's lots of options, certainly for younger people, and you need to market to them. Cricket, certainly red ball cricket, is seen as slow and old. And that is not seen to be a marketable product to the key demographic that advertisers want, which is younger people with disposable income. This is why, there was certainly a period of time in the 90s where more people went to church on a Sunday than watched the Premier League. Certainly live, or went to football games even throughout the 92 clubs. But you wouldn't have known that in terms of its prestige and its perceived value. So cricket, because of certain decisions that have been made, particularly taking it off free-to-air television, that was its natural advertising. And we're coming to, in my opinion, to a position where the generation that has not seen Alistair Cook play a test match for England, and he's scored more runs than anybody else. If you didn't have Sky TV, you would not have seen him score a test match run. That is coming to pass now. There's a whole generation that have missed out on heroes such as him, and they are now at the age where they are in that key demographic, that disposable income, that 20s and 30s age bracket, and they're just not interested in Red Bull. They know a little bit about cricket, even though cricket's not been in schools, so they don't have that introduction, and they don't mind a little bit of the crash bang wallop. But the Red Bull is being left behind.
Can I just give a shout out to the YouTube feeds because for the county cricket, because I actually think this idea that free-to-air cricket is the be-all and end-all is perhaps a bit of a red herring, because I don't think that's how young people consume what they watch. I think the YouTube feeds have been fantastic from county cricket, actually, and I don't think we can underestimate how important they've been.
Yeah, I think they have, and I just looked at a tweet from George DeBell saying there were 1 million views of the 4 games last night on YouTube. I think that's my point is slightly different in that, if you want to get a hold of a young audience now, you put it on TikTok, right? You wouldn't put it on YouTube, right? That's the social media that is popping with the teenagers. But YouTube is available to older demographics, right? So the people who are watching the YouTube feeds are people like me, who are older. I still think, if you look at what the Premier League has done, find me another sport that has grown solely on Sky.
Well, there probably isn't one, because you're right. There's no free to air coverage there, is there, of the football?
Even the Premier League, which is the biggest selling league and the most global league in the world, has kept that free to air element. And in their early days, when they were selling to an overseas market, they were kind of giving it away. And now, 25 years down the line, the overseas TV rights for the Premier League are worth more than the domestic. But in that period of time, they were virtually giving it away, not free, because it's hard to go to free from pay because you make it valueless. But they created a market by giving it away, or not giving it away, just correct myself, by making it cheap and making it easily accessible. The great thing about the YouTube streams, easily accessible. Anyone can get them, any device, it works on all of them. There's issues in terms of how you can monetize that. And I wouldn't be, Warwickshire have made theirs on their website, which is ridiculous in my opinion, because it puts barriers in the way. We need to build up an audience because it's been lost in schools. It's been lost to free-to-air TV, and the YouTube streams are, they're upped in quality. They're ubiquitous. Anyone can get them. I tweeted about making that product in 2012. By the way, I'm gonna big myself up. There's a tweet of me saying, add the BBC commentaries to the Site Street cameras and you have a digital product. So basically, I was right and everything I say is gospel. That's what I'm saying there.
Okay, so let's assume cricket is now wildly popular. Let's just forget all the barriers that we've talked about, and people want to go along and people think, I'm going to go and have a look. England are playing Lords. What? £130 for a ticket? I'm not paying that. Let's go and watch some T20. That's good fun. Oh, hang on, 35 quid. If the whole family go, then I'm paying 150 quid plus a bit of hamburgers and a couple of cans of pop. I'm going to be spending 250 quid to go to a night's cricket. The ECB are hiding behind this a little bit because a lot of missiles have been thrown their way, and they're saying, oh, no, it's down to the grounds. And it's down to, it's not down to us. They're kind of deflecting blame a little bit, which is wrong of them, in my opinion. Should Lords, and if depending on who you read at the moment, there are between 4,000 and I read one report saying 20,000 tickets unsold across the 5 days of the Test match. Watching the coverage of the T20 games this week, we all assume that they're going to be played in front of packed out houses. They're not. Yorkshire on Tuesday night was was fairly empty. Now, our people, and of course, as you said, Richard, we've got other diversions and distractions these days, and we are in a cost of living crisis. So people have to be choosy about where they're spending their disposable income. Should the counties be doing more to just encourage people to come in and in turn grow the game by just dropping prices from these lofty heights?
I suspect a grotty Tuesday night in May probably hasn't helped. I mean, Essex is normally full to the rafters for T20, and it wasn't last night.
No.
You know, it is half term, and I sat in a no alcohol stand, which I think actually that's a really good thing that's been brought in. I really appreciated that, because T20s for people that don't drink can be quite an unpleasant experience. And I was sat amongst a lot of children, which was great. But I think, it's a work night for most people. Not everybody works in schools or is a child, and people do like to go and drink a bit, don't they, at a T20? So
that's how it's sold, isn't it? That's how it's pitched.
Yeah, I suspect a Tuesday night on a fairly grotty night in May hasn't helped. Why not?
It's during half term.
During half term, but as I say, what about if we're looking at the demographic Richard's talking about? They couldn't care less whether it's half term or not. If we want our 20 to 40-year-olds, let's say, that haven't got kids, they've got to go to work on Wednesday morning.
Well, then you're in this.
Want to be at a cricket match till 10:30 at night.
But then we're fighting on a different battlefield. But if we say that cricket's best played on hot, sunny days, now you already mentioned that Chelmsford the other Sunday was very sparse when everything was, you couldn't have wanted more.
It was dead. Absolutely. I mean, even the members that could have been there weren't there.
Yeah.
And actually, to me, that's not advertising the pure class that was on that field that morning.
Yeah.
As it goes, Essex got Brooke and Milan out quite cheaply, but you had an opportunity to see two of the best batters in the country, and then Alistair Cook scored a century.
And Joe Root.
There was nothing on the social media feeds from the club at all.
Go on.
I take your point, Debbie, and I think you're absolutely right. But isn't that partly because of the game situation, that it was a nailed-on draw? And isn't that partly because of, there's many factors at play here, the weather, I think the ball, but also the ECB have said we want pitches where you are in that situation and batters are batting to save a draw is a situation that they want. But from a punter's perspective, I thought about going to that day, and I thought I'll leave it a miss. It's a nailed-on draw. I've been to two of the earlier days, but I didn't go on the Sunday because it was, for me, classy players were playing, absolutely, but the competitive edge of the game had gone. And this is one of my points, right, around particularly Championship cricket, if we go back to talking about that, is, for me, if it is purely about feeding the test side, right, then it's always going to be struggled to be marketed. I believe it has intrinsic value in itself as a competition, and I worry, and I follow the Championship, and I worry if Essex aren't playing well enough in it, because it's a competition that has value. I don't think the ECB, the way they've treated it as purely a school for England players, is helping there, and I don't think it helped in that scenario.
Yeah, I do. I get that, I guess. I mean, it was obvious, yes, before I rocked up, that we weren't going to have a result in that game. I can get that. I mean, I particularly for myself, I particularly like those players that I've mentioned, and I want to see as much as Alistair Cook while he's playing as I possibly can. And I do think, and you are right about maybe people not understanding how wonderful he is to watch because they haven't seen him at all. But let's have some marketing, and let's.
Yeah, I mean that. My point would be on a day like that, if we're trying to grow the game, forget all of us wizened cricket experts that will say, and we'll look at it from the game point of view. If you've got a load of youngsters, and they would go along, not particularly aware of the game situation, but they want to see Alistair Cook in the flesh. They want to see Harry Brook. They want to see Joe Root. They want to grab autographs. They want selfies, whatever else. They're not interested. it comes back to this whole thing of pride. How do we get people into the grounds, and particularly the youngsters? Because I feel that that's where it is. If you drag youngsters in, that aren't necessarily, they just want to be there for the occasion, for the game, to see these big names.
I mean, that first day that I went all those years ago, I actually got free tickets from the gym, the Virgin gym that was next door. I had no idea about the game situation, didn't really care, actually. But James Foster and Adam Wheater batted most of the day, and I absolutely loved it. And, roll back. I watch as much cricket as I possibly can, probably on the back of that one free ticket. And I'd forgotten Joe Root. I hadn't even mentioned him. During the beginning, at the end of Yorkshire's innings, he was standing on the boundary and was giving autographs. Because when I sat there at one point, I thought, can I get around there quickly enough to get a selfie? Even at my age, get the kids in for free, offer a ticket for £5. People will buy beer while they're there, and they might just get hooked on seeing something. Because seeing an Alistair Cook century under any circumstances is worth the time, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, for me, I think it might have been the Yorkshire game, but on the Thursday, there were schools in, and there's been a lot of schools there's been schools at Lancashire, Surrey. I think a lot of them have been in, and the kids were there, all in the corner in the Fellstead school stand, I think it was, and the highlight of their day is getting on the pitch at lunchtime.
Yeah.
And I've written about this in that. This is a unique selling point for county cricket. In no other sport that I've ever seen can any kid, any spectator actually, even old kids. I've been on pitch in the past playing ball, but any spectator can get on and play a pickup game of that sport in the break. I don't know another sport where that can happen, and that's not utilized. So for me, I wrote in the book about certainly in the one-day games, extend the break. Right, I've struggled to get my kids into cricket. I took my kids to 50 over games with a view to making the break the highlight of their day, and making sure that they got a good go on the pitch. And they'd be enthusiastic about that. Couldn't particularly get them enthusiastic about the game. But also, I would be saying, and I've worked in the stuff that I've done in US sports, there's so much more fan engagement you can do with cricket. For example, if you liaise when the schools are in, make sure, a little bit like umpiring on a Sunday, right? When the openers are in bat, you can have number 10 and 11 go and umpire, right? When you're playing Sunday cricket. Well, I would do the same thing, liaising with the schools. If the team is batting, 1 and 2 are in, 10 and 11 are going talking to the kids, right? Or maybe it's 8 and 9, and then 3 and 4 are in, and then it's 10 and 11, and then you can go back to 1 and 2 to make sure that those kids were engaged with the whole time.
Richard, Debbie's just about to go. Have you just got a final word before you disappear off?
Great chat. One of my final is, I cannot believe Harry Brook's not playing. I'm an Essex fan through and through, but I am furious about that. And actually, I was going to be gutted to miss his debut. I can't believe he's not making it. We shall see how England fare at Lords.
And just one thing, Debbie, before you go, got huge respect for fans that come into the game later, because most of the fans, most of the market research says you've got to get someone interested in cricket in primary school, otherwise they don't become a fan. You're different, so you should be listened to.
I actually, but I grew up at the side of a cricket pitch. That's one thing to think. My dad played, but yeah, I can't get enough of it. Enjoy the rest of your chat, guys. A good chat.
Okay.
Bye.
So, Richard, you were saying it's an interesting point about the whole thing is fans' engagement. One of the 100, I like it or loathe it, but what it was and continues to be is a very successful exercise in marketing. I mentioned about adverts being everywhere and the pricing. It's a good exercise in how you hook a market. Price the tickets as they were last year, very, very, very cheap. Stoke up the interest, and I guess, and a bit like how you mentioned about the example of the Premier League in football, is that you basically hook people in, and then gradually over time you then start monetizing it a bit more. Why can't that be grasped by the other forms of cricket? Particularly, it seems to be even eating into T20 that was always assumed to be a cash cow.
Well, it is eating in, and this is, I've written my newsletter is just about to come out. Just going to press send on it in the next few hours, and a lot of it is about this pricing issue. Look, with regards to the tournament now that shall not be named, it's, you look at the marketing of that. You say you've seen Surrey's advertising all over the tube. Well, Surrey spend, I think I'm right in saying, I've read this a few times, the amount that Surrey spend marketing the whole of their T20 campaign, the ECB spend on one individual game in that particular tournament, right? So there's a huge marketing spend, a vast marketing spend. The tickets are extremely cheap, but they're getting in very highly sought after players who will want to be well remunerated. This is what is eaten in, along with COVID, which is very significant. I need to add that caveat, but this is what is eaten into the ECB's reserves, taking them down from 70 million down to what, 2.5, 2.2, something like that. And so at the moment, it's a massive loss leader, but with a view to putting value into the product, so it can be monetized at a later date. They could have done that with the T20, right? They could have done that with the T20 as it was, which of course had record sales in 2019. So, you've got what you've paid for. Why did the ECB choose to do this? Well, I think there's many things, not least the counties didn't necessarily want to change. And also what the counties were doing with the T20, going for the beery blokey crowd, wasn't necessarily growing the game, because Debbie's absolutely right. It's not a very family friendly environment. A lot of T20s, they're too beery, they're too blokey, they're too raucous. I don't go to as many as I'd like to, because I don't really fancy that crowd. I'm of an age where I don't want it. I want to watch the game. And of course that doesn't grow the game, because you don't get families in.
Yeah. It's funny, we had Barry Hearn on the show, the ultimate sports game changer with what he's done in snooker and darts. And he views T20 as the one that got away. And he's a big cricket fan himself. He still plays at the age of 73, I think he is now. But he sort of used the example of, you could get the England test team and walk them the length of Brentwood High Street and no one would stop them or recognise them or anything like that. And he thought that was a crying shame. And yeah, he said T20 kind of fitted into his world of, to use his phrase, watching sport in a convivial atmosphere, which, if you look at the Ali Pally around about Christmas time, I think you'll get what I mean. But I agree with your point that it's not, and I've gone there with my family, and it's not a relaxing environment, is it? You are very aware of it's almost like a big stag party, isn't it?
Yeah, and I mean, there were stories about that with regard to the tournament that shall not be named. There was, because the same things happened there. The beery blokey crowd has gone in. I mean, I went to Ali Pally for the darts a couple of years ago, and it's a great night out. I'm not sure I could handle it all the time, or even a few nights in a row. But the thing about the darts, and if you look at Matchroom, what they've done, reinventing snooker twice, reinventing darts, what Eddie Hearn's doing with boxing, you have to look at those as excellent marketeers of sport, and not the top tier sports such as football. I interviewed Barry Hearn for my podcast, and he wasn't 100 fan from what I remember, but he also knows that stories need to be built. Stories need to be built, and athletes need to be paid, right? So if we're reducing ticket prices, for example, say we reduce ticket prices, and Leicestershire have just said there's a tenner across the board for the rest of the competition, and supposedly they're doing well. If we reduce prices, okay, who's going to take the haircut there, if that's the right financial term? Is it going to be the players? Because normally the players squeak quite loudly about that.
Yeah.
Is it going to eat into the profits of the county? Okay, but 50-60% of county revenues tend to come from the ECB anyway. So doesn't that fall back on the ECB to make up their revenues? Or I'm not quite sure how we're going to make this work, but I do think there's almost like, because of the introduction of this new tournament, it screwed up everything. It's screwed up the cash cow of the T20s. There's talk about it reducing the amount of red ball cricket. It is going to eat into the county game. We knew this and we warned everybody about it, but it went on. And now I find it extremely frustrating that we're getting articles saying, well, what can we do with the Blast? What can we do with the championship? Well, we should have had these questions before we introduced this new event, which has screwed up so many things, albeit change was needed. And perhaps the ECB got bored of trying to winkle change out of the counties and decided to place a bomb under the county structure, because that's effectively what it's done. Because people are now looking at, as quite rightly you said, the cost of living crisis, and we know there's worse to come at the end of the year. So they're going to cut back on watching things like county cricket games. Very well.
That old phrase of style over content, and I think if that tournament,
I've got you doing it. I've got you doing it.
I think the style is what's appealing to the new market, and we've seen hard evidence of youngsters, a more diverse audience coming to the game for the first time. If we were to basically wave a magic wand and forget that never happened, but we were to apply those tools of style to what we've got already, is it something that would necessarily fit? I mean, I would suggest that, as we've talked about, the T20 needs to shed the stag party image. Red ball cricket needs to shed its stuffy, boring, drawn-out image. What would you think would be ways that you would tweak red ball and white ball cricket, the traditional stuff? Forget that other tournament. How would you apply those marketing tools to those other two formats?
I think with the county championship, I mean, look, I have a preference for two divisions, but I'm not anti the three conferences. I see the value of both, because one thing that was great about the three conferences is that when we had it, and Warwickshire won the title, the way I could see it continuing was every year we would have a real race to the line. You would have I think it was three or four counties could have won the title on the final day last year. And I think we'd nearly always have that. So that's positive. The issue was what you do with Conference 2 and 3 later in the season. I don't think the Bob Willis Trophy has ever really worked, because cup finals in September when there's rain around is never going to properly work as far as I'm concerned, because it affects the sporting integrity. I mean, I do think there is value in getting I'd have been trying to put the Blast back on free-to-air television. So many people of our age got into county cricket because of Sunday Grandstand and the Sunday League. And those, and Essex were exceptionally good around that period of time.
And the Gillette Cup and the NatWest Cup were all free to air as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is still absolutely critical. I know the YouTube streams are really important. But if you look at the way, I was going to talk about IPL and Big Bash, but of course that is franchise cricket, but they have managed to tell a very different story, or present a very different story about their particular franchises. Certainly, if you compare Australia, it seems to be more of a family-friendly crowd than certainly you get in the T20s in the UK. I would be looking at certain games being family days and certain games being more for the beery crowds. So the Friday nights are the beery crowds. The Sunday afternoons are the more family-friendly days, which is what they used to do, I know. But also upping the marketing spend. Upping the marketing spend. I'd be contracting players as part of their salary to use their social media presence to create content that would attract kids and to be cementing that relationship by going into schools and offering promotional tickets and linking it even up with the All-Star scheme. I know that's club based, but things like that, contracting players, so it's a win-win. They get money for helping to grow the game's social media presence, which is significantly important, hugely important in attracting people. And I would, as I said, in the RL50, I know you didn't talk about that, but I'd be saying extend the break, make it an hour break. I would be selling pitches on the outfield for picnics, right? So you've got an hour break, okay? You've got a picnic area, and you can pay for a pitch, and you can have a picnic on the outfield. Now, there's logistical issues around that, but that is a difference point for cricket that you don't get. It's a USP, a unique selling point. Okay, and you can sell a whole corporate, not a hospitality package around that potentially, but also getting kids on that pitch is significant, and getting your heroes out of the dressing room and connecting with those players. I mean, I was thinking when what Debbie was talking about, and Joe Root was walking around the ground, Dan Lawrence was walking around the ground that day. I think he was testing his hamstring, but I would literally have a couple of areas of the dugouts saying, okay, 2 players need to be in that dugout area at all times, and they're available for selfies and autographs. All they got to do is sit there, right? They got to sit there an hour at a time. Or if they're walking around the ground and they've got a bib on, right, they can be approached for selfies, right? So there's no hesitancy, there's no issue, but contract players to say, okay, you've got to go out X amount of times. You do it in football. These opportunities to engage with sponsors are contracted, and there is payment involved. Okay, incentivizing players to grow the sport is hugely significant, and I think it'll work with the sort of local heroes like Adam Wheater, who's not going to likely to play for England. Well, he's retiring at the end of the season. But Adam Wheater a couple of years ago wasn't going to play for England, but he could become a local hero, and he might want to up his money by a few grand a year. And if he's incentivized to by the good of the sport, isn't that a win-win? That's the way I'm thinking about it anyway.
That's a good positive way to end. My Zoom account is about to expire. Richard, many thanks for joining us. Some excellent thought-provoking stuff there. And also to Debbie, who has had to leave us, but I'm sure we shall hear from her again very, very soon.